The window across the street. Calm but eerie setup. New apartment, new view. When Melissa Grant, a 32-year-old freelance artist, moved into her new apartment in Portland, Oregon, she thought she'd finally found peace. It was early spring. Gray skies, light rain, and the smell of wet pine in the air. The apartment overlooked a quiet cul-de-sac filled with small two-story homes. Across the street stood a pale blue house with drawn curtains and a single flickering porch light. The landlord had warned her, "Old Mr. Dwyer lives there. Keeps to himself." Every night while sketching near her window, Melissa noticed something unsettling, a faint movement behind those curtains. Sometimes a hand, sometimes a face, pressed against the glass for just a moment too long. She convinced herself it was nothing, just her imagination. Until one night when she waved jokingly toward the window, and the figure waved back perfectly in sync with her. The first strange sign, the shadow that knows. Days passed, but the figure never stopped watching. At 2:17 a.m., Melissa would see that same silhouette, motionless, head slightly tilted. Curiosity won. She asked her next-door neighbor, Cindy, about the man across the street. Cindy frowned. "Mr. Dwyer. He passed away last summer." Melissa froze. "You're sure?" "Pretty sure. His son came, emptied the house. It's been empty ever since." That night, Melissa couldn't focus. The rain drummed on the glass as she peeked through her blinds. The shadow stood there again, closer this time, almost pressed against the window pane. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Why aren't you waving tonight?" Melissa's breath hitched. She glanced outside. The figure's hand slowly rose and waved again. Fear builds. Eyes in the curtains, Melissa called the police. 2 officers came, checked the property, and found nothing but dust and old furniture. "House is empty, ma'am," one of them said. "Maybe some kids sneaking in. Happens a lot." But that didn't explain the eyes. Over the next few nights, Melissa began waking up to the faint creak of her window latch. Her curtains would be slightly open, though she swore she'd closed them before bed. One morning, she found footprints in the dew on her balcony, small barefoot prints leading directly to her window, then vanishing at the edge. When she told Cindy, the woman looked terrified. "You need to leave that window shut no matter what you hear." That night, as Melissa drew at her desk, she heard a faint scratching sound inside her walls. Then, 3 slow knocks came from inside the air vent beside her. Isolation and doubt. Something's inside. Melissa started sleeping with the lights on. The landlord brushed off her complaints, and Cindy stopped answering her calls. The rain never seemed to stop, tapping endlessly on the window, masking subtle sounds beneath. One stormy night, Melissa awoke to whispering, not from outside, from her closet. She grabbed a flashlight, trembling. The whispering grew clearer. "You shouldn't have waved." The door creaked open on its own, revealing nothing but her coats. Then she saw it, a hole in the drywall leading into the shared wall between apartments. Inside, something moved, slow and wet. She dropped the light and stumbled back, gasping. The whisper stopped. Her phone buzzed again. "It's warmer in your room." Rain pounded harder against the glass, and faintly behind the curtains, 2 hands pressed against her window from the outside. The threat reveals itself. The crawl space desperate, Melissa called the police again. They arrived after an hour, but when they entered, one officer paused near the vent. "Ma'am, did you know there's a crawl space behind this wall?" Melissa shook her head. They unscrewed the vent cover. The smell hit them first, rot and decay. Inside was a narrow tunnel connecting to the house across the street. In the flashlight beam, a figure darted backward, impossibly fast. The officers shouted and crawled in, but within seconds their lights flickered out. Then silence. Melissa waited by the door, heart hammering. After a minute, one of the officers emerged, pale and shaking. "No one's in there," he whispered. "But the walls, they're covered in photos of you. Dozens of Polaroids, all taken through her window, every night for weeks. And in the last one, she was sleeping. The haunting ending. Through the window." Melissa moved out 2 days later, leaving most of her things behind. The landlord found her apartment spotless, except for one thing, a single Polaroid left on the desk. It showed her new place across town, her new window. Police searched the blue house again, but this time the crawl space was gone. Bricked up as if it had The man in apartment 2B, calm but eerie setup, the perfect apartment. When Derek Miller, a 27-year-old mechanic, moved into a small apartment complex on the outskirts of Cleveland, Ohio, he thought he'd finally caught a break. Rent was cheap, utilities included, and it was close to his garage job. The building was old, creaky hallways, flickering exit lights, and the faint smell of mildew that no one could quite place. His neighbor in apartment 2B was an older man named Mr. Harland. Quiet, polite, always wearing the same dark robe. They only exchanged a few words. Morning, evening, and once, "You shouldn't stay up too late." That last line stuck with Derek. He shrugged it off until one night, while watching TV near midnight, he heard soft, deliberate footsteps above him. But Derek lived on the top floor. He looked up, heart pounding. The sound of slow, dragging steps circled directly over his bed. The first strange sign: ceiling scratches. The next morning, Derek told the landlord about the noise. The man frowned. "There's nothing above you, son. Just attic storage sealed years ago." That night, the scratching returned, louder, angrier. It sounded like fingernails scraping across the ceiling. Dust rained down onto Derek's bed. He grabbed a broom handle and banged upward, shouting, "Knock it off!" The scratching stopped. Then directly above him came 3 slow knocks answering his. He froze. The next day, he asked another tenant, Gloria, about Mr. Harland. She hesitated, looking pale. "He's quiet, keeps to himself, but don't go near his door after dark." "Why?" "He prays it for the things that live in the walls." Derek laughed it off, but that night, as he tried to sleep, a low whisper seeped through the ceiling. It sounded like someone calling his name. Fear builds. Behind the vents, sleep became impossible. Every night, Derek heard whispering through the vents. Sometimes laughter, sometimes something like chanting. He crouched by one of the vents, holding his phone flashlight. Inside, something glimmered. It was a small camera lens staring back. He ripped the vent open, but the wires led up into the ceiling, disappearing behind insulation. Shaking, he ran downstairs and pounded on Mr. Harland's door. No answer. He twisted the handle. It was unlocked. Inside, the apartment was bare. No furniture, no food. Just dozens of candles melted onto the floor and walls covered in drawings, hundreds of eyes all watching. In the center sat a single tape recorder still spinning. Derek pressed play. "They crawl when the lights go out. Stay still or they'll come down." At that exact moment, every light in the hallway flickered off. Isolation and doubt, the eyes in the ceiling. Derek's landlord claimed Harland moved out days ago. Left no forwarding address. But Derek had seen the man's robe draped over a chair in 2B just last night. Each night after that, new holes appeared in his ceiling. Small, like knuckles had pressed through. He covered them with tape, but by morning they'd always return. He recorded the noises, but when he played them back, the audio was worse. Whispers layered on whispers, all repeating the same words, "Feed us." He started staying at a friend's place, but even there, he swore he could hear faint scratching behind the walls. When he finally returned home, his entire ceiling had sagged inward, heavy, soft breathing. From the vent above his bed, a single eye peered down at him, unblinking. The threat reveals itself. The crawl space terrified, Derek climbed into the attic through the old access panel. His flashlight revealed something horrific, a long, low crawl space lined with mattresses and rotting food. The smell of mold and flesh filled the air. In the far corner, he saw a figure hunched over wearing Harland's robe. Its face was wrong, stretched too long, eyes milky white, mouth wide open as if frozen in a scream. It began to move toward him, bones cracking with each step. "Mr. Harland?" Derek stammered. The thing tilted its head. "Stay still. They'll see you." From behind the creature, dozens of pale hands crawled from the insulation, pulling themselves forward, bodies that looked half human, half decayed. Derek scrambled backward, falling through the ceiling and crashing onto his bed below as plaster and grey fingers rained down around him. The haunting ending. Apartment 2B. The police arrived after a neighbor heard the crash. They found Derek shaking, covered in dust, pointing at the ceiling. "They're up there." But when officers opened the attic, it was empty. No tunnel, no bodies. The only thing found was a single candle burned into the floor, and a message scrawled beside it in ash. "You woke them." Derek moved out that night. Weeks later, a new tenant moved into his old apartment. She complained to the landlord about the weird noises above the bed. He sighed. "There's no attic access anymore, ma'am. It's sealed." That night, as the woman drifted to sleep, she felt warm air blowing from the vent above her. A faint whisper slipped through the dark. "2B always has room for one more." The basement door calm but eerie setup. A quiet street in Charleston, Evelyn Hart. A 41-year-old single mother had just moved into a small rental duplex in Charleston, West Virginia, with her teenage son, Caleb. The neighborhood was quiet, almost too quiet. Every lawn perfectly trimmed, every porch light glowing in sync. Their neighbor, Mrs. Latham, lived in the adjoining unit. A frail woman in her 70s, always wearing a floral nightgown, always watching from her window. The landlord said she'd lived there since the 1960s. On their first night, Evelyn noticed a strange thing, a door in the basement that didn't match the rest of the house. It was old, reinforced with bolts and padlocked shut. When she asked Mrs. Latham about it the next morning, the old woman smiled thinly. "Oh dear, don't open that door. The last tenant did. They never found him." Evelyn laughed nervously. But that night she heard knocking from the basement. 3 slow, hollow knocks. The first strange sign, the door that breathes. The knocks came every night after midnight. Evelyn told herself it was the pipes, or maybe Caleb sneaking downstairs. But when she checked, the air around the basement door felt wrong, warm like something breathing on the other side. Caleb swore he didn't go near it. One evening, as Evelyn folded laundry, she heard a faint voice whisper through the floorboards. "Please, let me out." She froze, every hair on her arms rising. The next day, she asked Mrs. Latham again if there was another unit beneath theirs. The woman's eyes darkened. "That's not a room, dear. It's a passage. Don't listen to it." When Evelyn pressed for more, Mrs. Latham simply muttered, "It always starts with the knocking." That night, the knocks didn't stop at 3. They continued for hours, and the basement door handle began to rattle on its own. Fear builds. "What's behind the wall?" Evelyn called the landlord, furious. He denied any knowledge of the door. "It's not in the floor plan," he said. "Must be an old storm shelter or something." But Evelyn couldn't shake the feeling that something alive was inside. She tried recording the knocks on her phone. When she played it back, her stomach dropped. It wasn't knocking at all. It was whispering her name. Caleb began waking up screaming, saying he saw a shadow crawling out from the cracks. When Evelyn went to comfort him, she noticed something horrifying. Faint handprints smeared across the floor, leading from the basement door to her son's room. They were wet, like someone had dragged muddy fingers along the floorboards. She locked the basement and slept with a knife beside her bed. But around 2 a.m. the house went silent, and then from below she heard Caleb's voice softly calling, "Mom, help me, isolation and doubt, the old neighbor's secret." Evelyn sprinted to Caleb's room, but he was fast asleep. His voice, however, continued echoing from the basement. Panicked, she ran to Mrs. Latham's door and pounded until it opened. The old woman looked terrified. "You shouldn't have answered it," she whispered. "Answered what?" Evelyn demanded. "The voice, it mimics, it waits until you listen." She handed Evelyn a rusted key. This used to be a church rectory. They sealed the lower chamber after the preacher's son vanished. Evelyn didn't want to believe it, but the knocking grew louder each night. Caleb started sleepwalking, always toward the basement. And one morning, Evelyn found the padlock open, the keyhole still warm to the touch. Inside, the air was thick with rot, and written on the wall in ash were the words, "You unlocked it. Now finish what he started. The threat reveals itself." The chamber below. Evelyn descended the basement stairs with a flashlight, heart pounding. The door now hung open, revealing a narrow stone stairwell spiraling downward, far deeper than any basement should go. As she stepped in, the door slammed shut behind her. Her flashlight flickered, illuminating carvings on the walls, faces, hundreds of them, frozen mid-scream. From below came the sound of chains dragging across the floor. "Caleb," she whispered. A figure emerged from the darkness. Small, hunched, skin gray and stretched thin. Its face was almost human, except for the black pits where eyes should have been. It smiled. "Mom, it whispered in Caleb's voice. She screamed and bolted up the stairs, slamming the door. But on the other side, something pounded, stronger, faster, like it wanted out. The house shook as the bolts began to snap. The haunting ending. The new tenants. The next morning, police arrived to find the front door wide open, the basement flooded with muddy water. Evelyn and Caleb were gone. The landlord claimed she'd broken her lease and left without notice. A few weeks later, new tenants moved in. A young couple expecting their first child. The basement door was still there, bolted shut again. The landlord told them it was just storage. But on their first night, the wife woke up to the sound of knocking. She nudged her husband. "Do you hear that?" From downstairs came a child's voice, calm, polite, and close. "Can I come up now?" The next morning, the couple called the landlord about the noise. He sighed as if he'd heard it before. "Don't worry," he said. "It always stops once someone answers."